Welcome to the University of New Mexico. We actually have a lot of guests that are visiting from an institution, so welcome to UNM. We're very excited to host our second annual Symposium for Community Engagement. So last year we did the first one. This year we wanted to, excuse me, one footnote. I was flying back last week and I caught something, so I'm not contagious, but it might be a struggle, so just bear with me. It's kind of been lingering on. But we were very excited to bring in some institutions to talk about community engagement in our region. So I met Cami this year, and we actually had a discussion about Hispanic serving institutions. So we thought that we would bring a group of institutions together to really have a conversation about how we serve and what kind of groups are we working with in our community. So with that, I wanted to just acknowledge where we at in our region and really the indigenous people that actually occupy this realm. And so I wanted to start with our statement for territorial acknowledgement. So founded in 1889, the University of New Mexico sits on the traditional homelands of the Pueblo of Sandia, the original people of New Mexico, Pueblo, Navajo, and Apache. Since the time immemorial, have deep connections to the land and have made significant contributions to the broader community statewide. We honor the land itself and those who remain stewards of this land throughout the generations, and also acknowledge our committed relationship to our indigenous people. We greatly recognize our history. And so, this being about community, we really want to acknowledge where we are, and so the University of New Mexico really has a great responsibility to this region. So I wanted to kind of start that off with acknowledging that. Again, I was talking about Cami Jones Friedrichs, who's the director, she's back in the back, of the Carnegie Elect for Community Engagement. I got the opportunity to meet her this summer at a workshop, and just was really impressed with what they're doing and how they're reconfiguring the Carnegie classification. And I thought it would be really interesting to talk about Hispanic serving institutions, minority serving institutions, and really the work that we're doing here in our region. So Cami was very nice to agree to come out and be our keynote. So we're really encouraged to be able to have her here today. If you don't know, we are one of 368 institutions around the United States that have the Carnegie classification. So we're honored to be part of that group. And I thought, we should really look at our region and understand the impact that we have to our communities and really our partners in our region. So we have representatives from the University of Colorado, University of Arizona, Texas Tech University, and UTEP. So thank you again for everybody that's made the trip out here. We really are looking forward to hear about how you are working in this space, and really honored that you've made the trip up and down, I guess, for our Colorado colleagues. So thank you so much. Here at the University of New Mexico, we actually are in every community, in every county throughout the state. So we're very, stratified throughout our region, and we have connections throughout the state. So we're very honored to be able to work with our community members. In terms of getting ready for this reclassification, so we're for our reclassification for the Carnegie Report, we and my staff has been really looking out across the campus wide to understand the impact that we have. And it's really wonderful to start to see the different centers, the different faculty, everybody from Chicano Studies to the Center for Native American Arts, Indigenous Design. Everybody that's doing this work is really passionate about. It's really part of our DNA. When you look at the work that's being done, and there's just this commitment and passion to serve our communities, and that's really one of the things that's resonating as we kind of start to look holistically at the institution and the impact that we have in our communities. I want to acknowledge our advisory committee because they've been really instrumental. This is we've barely formed this new office of community engagement this last year, but these colleagues represent the institution across, very interdisciplinary, and being very instrumental in terms of guidance and really setting up a foundation for the future. So I want to acknowledge my committee because they've been wonderful and really an essential part of moving this agenda forward. I also wanted to thank Provost Holloway. I wanted to say that he's been very committed to community engagement, and just the opportunity to bring people to be able to do this is really a product of Provost Holloway. So thank you so much for providing this opportunity. I wanted to talk a little bit about what I was saying about passion. So for you that don't know me, I'm an architect. I grew up in the state of New Mexico. I left to New York, never thought I'd come back, but evidently something about green chili and the warmth of the state brought me back. So I've been here, this is my 23rd year. And I grew up in a mining town, so this is Silver City in the southwest corner of New Mexico. And I started a program in 2016 called Finding Rural, and it was really dedicated to looking how architecture design can play a role in economic development. And so we've been very fortunate to be able to work across the state in many different areas, and really trying to allow our students the opportunity to kind of work with communities and really have an impact. So we've been really proud of the work that we've been doing. But I wanted to share a video that we put together a few years ago, just to kind of amplify that idea of the community and the people that we serve. So I'm going to play this real quick.
Rural. The hard work, no excuse, humble, get it done, dedicated, roll up your sleeves attitude. Rural. Over here we have doers, makers, artists, dreamers who let the rushing flow of the big ditch after a storm carves our own pathway in life. Rural. At Moderator Studio, we know music, cuisine, technology, and design influences rural communities just as much as a rural community influences them. The future of Silver City relies on both. Rural is sustainable. Rural is resourceful. A love for creating, for playing, for making and doing doesn't stop. To our doers and to our dreamers, it starts and lives on with you.
Just gives you a little bit of the idea of the work that we did, and really kind of the passion that's associated to this. I think that when I reach out to faculty that are doing this kind of work, there's a similar kind of a passion in what they do. So we're very encouraged about where we're headed. I think one of the things that we are really interested in is the co-production of knowledge, and really valuing our community members and what they bring to the table. Because I think, in academia, we tend to think about what we do a lot, but there's a lot of intelligence and know-how in what people are doing in their communities, and really being able to collaborate and understand how we can think about problem solving and really impacting them is really the foundation of the work that we do. So I really want to acknowledge that. As we move forward, as we start to look at reclassification from the Carnegie, it's really important for us to understand what this means to us as an institution. And I think later today we'll have a panel that starts to really kind of peel back, and I'm going to hear from our colleagues from other institutions and how they think about the classification and how they leverage that. So we're very excited about where we're headed. I'm gonna introduce Provost Holloway and have him say a few words about today. So thank you, Provost Holloway.
Thanks, Tim, and Tim left out a thanks, so I think we should thank Tim Castillo for all the work that he's doing. So thank you for coming to the 2024 Community Engagement Symposium with, I think a really bright, bold, future-minded title, Breaking Barriers. And the concept of community engagement is not always top of mind for folks in the academy. As academics, we tend to think research and teaching. Sometimes we talk about service, but we don't always think about service in the context of community engagement. It's frequently service to our professions and things like that. And so I think it's worth thinking about where community engagement does fit in to our work as academics. And with all the things that you're asked to do as faculty in your jobs, advancing research, developing new understanding, developing new ways of teaching, supporting students, how do you think about community engagement? And how do you make that part of your work? I'm probably preaching to the choir, but that's okay. I think addressing these questions is still really important, and it's one of the goals of this day-long event. I'd like to particularly note and thank Cami Jones-Friedrichs, the director of the Carnegie Elective Classification for Community Engagement, for being here with us. She's well known for her many contributions and scholarship in advancing community university partnerships, so I know we'll learn a lot from her. In today's symposium, organized by Tim and his team in his role as Director of Community Engagement Initiatives, we're going to provide education, awareness, actionable ideas for faculty and others at UNM who are focused in community engaged learning and scholarship. And I'm sure it will demonstrate the many benefits that come from partnerships with community that are necessary to uphold this work and enable services through outreach. As most of you are aware, as Tim was just discussing, UNM is currently preparing a report for reaffirmation for our Carnegie Elective Classification for Community Engagement. This is one of those microphones. And this classification, or really the scholarship and learning and service that underlie it, is just one of the ways that we live into our UNM 2040 values, goal one of which is advance New Mexico. And this is one of the ways that we do that. We're the university for New Mexico. And most of us readily understand that supporting our state is really part of our institutional soul. The Carnegie Elective Classification is an indicator. It indicates institutional commitment to community engagement. It's a statement. It's established by peer review. And it shows that we're actually employing smart practices when we engage with the many communities of New Mexico, who in turn support us. We first earned this designation in 2020. At the time, there were 119 universities around the country who earned the Carnegie classification for community engagement, now 368. And Tim and his team and many others are working on building a convincing case that UNM is more than worthy of holding this designation when the next round of institutions are selected in 2025. That report is due on April 1st. I hope that's not a joke. This classification and really the process that Tim is going through with all of you to pull us together to build the case for reaffirmation is most importantly a chance for us to critically examine our practices and see where we can do things better. So please enjoy this day. I'm sure that it will unlock new ideas and connections for you. I'll be looking forward to hearing about the outcomes generated from the symposium and seeing those outcomes as they come into fruition here at UNM and other institutions across the region. And I hope that the Carnegie classification gives us a renewed sense of how the University of New Mexico and its partners can work together with the communities of our state to make this special place in which we live even better and to serve all of our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Holloway. Well, we did provide an online QR code so you could download the program today. So we were trying to be conscious about our environment and try not to print too many things. So if you want to take a look at the schedule, you can download it on your phone. So it's up there and it's also in your seat. So if you want to take a look at that, please do. We're very excited about the day. So I'm going to run a little bit through the different panels and the representation that we have. The first panel is really about the communities that we serve. So we have representatives from the University of Arizona, Texas Tech, University of Colorado, and University of Texas at El Paso. So very excited. I'll introduce everybody here in a little bit, but we're looking forward to that first panel that will take us to about 11:30. And then we'll have a lunch break on your own. And so we actually on the website You can find some venues for our guests if you want to partake out on Central. There's some wonderful places. Frontier Restaurant is actually a recommendation, so please take a look at that. And then we're having an internal discussion about setting up a faculty academy. So we've designated several faculty from across different schools and colleges. And so we're going to have a group today that's going to talk about really looking at a fellowship program and really how to kind of grow our faculty in community engagement. So that'll happen today. It'll be led by Dr. Wallerstein and Dr. Pride today. So very excited about that. So if you're here and you're part of that group, we look forward to having you today. And then we'll have the keynote. Cami will do her keynote address at 1 to 1:45. Very excited about that as well. And then our second panel is why Carnegie, leveraging the Carnegie Community Engagement Classification. And really, it was a conversation that I was having with Cami about, how do institutions leverage this? And I think we've held this title since 2020. Again, going up for this reclassification. And I think we can do things better. And that's really what we're here to do today, is learn how to do these things better and learn from our colleagues at different institutions. So very excited about that panel. That'll take us to 3:15. And then at 3:30, we'll have our last panel, tenure and promotion. I think this has been an internal discussion with my colleagues, with my team, about how we look at TMP for the future. It's not something that I think is easy, particularly in this space. And I've been talking to colleagues across the country about this and how it's been handled. So I'm really excited about how other colleagues at other institutions are looking at TMP. So I hope you'll stick around. Wonderful faculty who will be part of that. And then at the end of the day, we'll have a reception downstairs in the tap room. So I would hope that you would come join us. So looking forward to the day's event. So that's in a nutshell what we've got going on. So excuse me. I'm gonna invite my colleagues to come up. Actually, if you guys could come and sit at the tables. So the first panel. So Dr. Hatcher, Jeanne, Jenna, and unfortunately Ersela from Texas Tech got sick, so she won't be joining us today. So yeah, if we get 3 on that side and 3 on this side. Thank you so much. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with bios. If you, in time calibration, I want to be able to get through the presentation. So I've asked each of these colleagues to set up a slide presentation, kind of talks about what they do. So if you want to look at their bios, please download it on the program. So we're going to start with Dr. Jennifer Hatcher from the University of Arizona. So if you please help me welcome Dr. Hatcher.
Good morning. Is this a clicker that's live?
Yeah, and you can use it.
Or I can use this?
Yeah.
But this mic is funny, but I like to walk around. All right, so good morning. I'm Jenna. I go by Jenna Hatcher, and I'm the Vice Provost and the Chief Inclusion Officer for the University of Arizona. And it is my pleasure to be with you all to talk about the communities that we serve at the University of Arizona. So we're a land grant, so we're, as your provost said, we think of ourselves as the university for Arizona. So I'm gonna start, maybe, it's possible I'll start with a sort of a land acknowledgement. We have a video that talks about where we are centered on the territory in Arizona, so I'll just play this.
The University of Arizona is on the land and territory of indigenous people.
And today, Arizona is home to 22
federally recognized tribes,
with Tucson being home
to the Osum and the Yaqui.
committed to diversity and inclusion,
Committed to diversity and inclusion
The university strives to build sustainable relationships
with sovereign Native nations
with sovereign Native nations
and indigenous communities
through educational offerings
through educational offerings,
partnerships, and community service.
So, our land acknowledgement, we respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous people. Arizona is home, as we said, to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the Atam and the Yaqui. And we are committed to diversity and inclusion, and we strive to build these relationships, sustainable relationships with sovereign native nations and indigenous communities through educational offerings, partnerships, and community services. So the beginning of the communities we serve is clearly that we are a native serving institution. We serve, as a land grant institution, we serve the 22 federally recognized tribes and other tribes. As your slide showed, the Navajo is clearly a giant part of Arizona as well as New Mexico. They don't recognize the same borders we do. They clearly recognize borders of their own. And we are committed to serving our native partners and in ways that we can talk about as we move on. I wanted to ground us after the land acknowledgement in kind of the core values and purpose of the university as a land grant mission. We are working to expand human potential, explore new horizons, and enrich life for all, and improve how we educate and innovate so we can lead the way in developing adaptive problem solvers capable of tackling challenges. And our core values as a university are integrity, compassion, exploration, adaptation, inclusion, and determination. So, we are here today probably because we are a Hispanic serving institution, which we've been only since 2018. I got there in 2018, I was shocked that, I came from Kentucky. And I was kind of shocked that a university in Arizona was not already a Hispanic serving institution. But we became that the very year that I got there. And many of you probably know Marla Franco, who leads our Hispanic serving institution. She's the vice president. And she leads this initiative. She's nationally known for really having helped us to stand up this initiative. So the communities we serve in this incoming class, we have about 56,000 students. We're what I think of as a giant public university. We serve 24.9% of the total Hispanic, of our workforce is Hispanic. We have 27% Hispanic undergrads. 45% of our classified staff is Hispanic. That's a huge amount of our staff being Hispanic. 30% of this incoming first year undergrads are Hispanic. 10% of our faculty, a little closer to 11%. Transfer students, you can see 35.9%, and Hispanic graduate students are about 20%. So we have clearly had some awards in the Hispanic space. I'm going to just show you a little bit of the report that we have. Oh, no, I'm not. Yes, I am. Someone clearly helped me to put this together. Wasn't me. It's possible I won't be able to click on this report, but if not, it's helpful. You can scan the barcode, and it just tells you a little bit about the partnerships that we have as a Hispanic serving institution, how Marla and the folks in the Hispanic Serving Institute, the HSI office, have developed these statewide partnerships to help to serve, and the outreach. A lot of what's in this report is really the outreach that we do with the Hispanic community, and how so we also have in my space 7 identity centers or cultural centers. We are one of the few in the country who have that many different identity or cultural centers. And one of those is Hispanic Serving Cultural Center, the Guerrero Center. And we partner with the community, and both internal and external to the university, to outreach to our Hispanic community. We have programming within that center that partners with the HSI office to offer a variety of programs that support our undergrad and graduate Hispanic students. Like I said, we have 7. We will have an 8th center likely next year, which will support our Middle Eastern and North African students. So we may only, I think, one other One other university in the country probably has that, and it's in Chicago. So we'll have 8 cultural or identity centers. Those are the communities that we reach out to. Oh, that can't be right. What's happening here? There we go. We'll go to the next slide. There we go. So we're also inclusive of other races and ethnicities. I really wanted to start with highlighting our connection with our Hispanic community as well as our Native community, which I look at as foundational to who we are as a land-grant university, given the makeup of the state of Arizona and the region that we live in. So you can see here, and I didn't give a national comparison, but my background is from community engagement at the Cancer Center. So we have a really strong national comparison in terms of those 22 tribal communities, and the fact that we serve a really large Native community. So here you see our undergraduate incoming class and the percentages that we serve in the American Indian or Alaskan Native. So you see graduate and undergraduate in the Asian community. We also have an Asian Pacific Cultural Center that undergirds our outreach to this community. I'd say it's likely our most active center, which also was another surprise to me, that our Asian Pacific community was so strongly embedded in the university. And of course, our new incoming president, who's been with us for 6 weeks or something, is the first president of color, and he's in the Asian Pacific community, Dr. Garamella. We serve a Black or African American community here, undergrads 7.3% in the incoming class, and graduates 5.9%, as compared to a state that has about 3 or 4% African American. It's me and the rest of my family. And so there are not very many African Americans in Arizona. And my daughter is here in Albuquerque with you also. We lost one. But we also have a cultural center that serves African Americans and African American student affairs, which is also a very vibrant cultural center. And 27% incoming class, Hispanic or Latinx, and graduate class about 20%. Native American Pacific Islanders, also a very small percent of those, and about 65% incoming undergrads are white, or graduate students 56%. This is the first year in our incoming class we are about to break the majority minority in the incoming class. We're right at 50% of the incoming class being minority, historically minoritized students. Okay, Jenna, don't mess it up. Okay, there we go. The geographic origin. I'm also really proud of the fact that we serve a considerable amount of international students. One of my friends, Dr. Jenny Lee, is the Vice President for International Affairs, and we are very proud of our service to international students from all across the world. We have micro campuses and other ways that we connect, and today we have Indian presidents from across the world convened at our Indian from India convened at our university to understand how the connections with other international students are. We have international undergrads, 3.8%, graduates, 16.7%. We serve, as a land-grant institution should, a lot of the residents of Arizona. So you see here that 48% of our student body is from the state of Arizona. And then you can see the other undergraduate, and then about 45% of graduates. So we take great pride in serving the folks that live in the state of Arizona. We're also committed to access for people who may have not previously had access to higher education. And so you see in our incoming first year, first generation numbers and transfer numbers and others. So we're really committed to serving first gen students and also Pell recipients, meaning those who maybe would not be able to have afforded higher education. And we also serve a significant student body that's over the age of 25. So we really have a significant mix or diversification of the communities that we outreach to. And also this transfer student profile speaks to how we connect with our community colleges and others across the state. So here you can see students transferring from the major community colleges in our area, Pima Community College, Maricopa Community College System, and then other four-year institutions that are within the state of Arizona. So we're proud to be able to connect with Pima and Maricopa Community College systems in order to bring students from those two-year colleges into the university, and then also those who are in community colleges outside of the state. Oh, that's not me. So that's a kind of an overarching look at the communities that we serve. It was a pleasure to go first because who knows if that's exactly what you were looking for, but that is what I presented to you, and I'll take questions, I think, at the end when everybody spoke. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next up is Jenna Lujan from the University of Texas at El Paso.
Good morning, buenos dias. I'm also Jennifer, but go by Jenna. I've never met anybody else like that.
I know.
Yeah. I'm the director at the Center for Community Engagement at the University of Texas at El Paso, UTEP. And UTEP is in a unique position. We are a borderplex region that borders Las Cruces, New Mexico, and Juarez, Mexico. And the university is actually placed in a position where you can see both the country across and the New Mexico, the state on the other side. Our population is about close to 900,000, but if you consider the whole borderplex, metroplex area, it's close to like 2 million people. Our median age is 34, 82% are Hispanic in the community. Poverty rate is 19.3%, and our median household income is $55,000. So UTEP our mission is that we are a comprehensive public research university, R1, that increases access to excellent higher education. We advance discovery of public value and positively impact the health, culture, education, and economy of the community that we serve. And so you can see here, our student population really does mirror the region that we are placed in. 84% of our student population are Hispanic, 84% come from the community. And so you see there that access within the community. Many of our students are first generation, about half of them are first generation students. We have about 23, close to 24,000 students at the university. And again, a large majority, because they come from the community, are commuter students. So a very different population than the traditional university student population. We are a Carnegie classified institution. We've been classified since 2010. And we really are focused on community engagement embedded in our mission. And so our mission really does incorporate areas of Hispanic servingness, access to excellence, and so maintaining that we will offer our community access to our university, to an excellent R1 university. We have a place-based mission and very representative of our population. And so we like to look at the difference or identify UTEP as more of a Hispanic serving versus a Hispanic enrolling. And what we mean by that is that our commitment to serve the region and ensure that our regional students have access to excellent education, and the way that we focus our mission and the programs and our goals is definitely keeping in mind our student population. And so really understanding that demographic, it's not a homogeneous group, but many attributes and characteristics that are noteworthy of our students that come from the community. So again, many are first generation college students, various immigration generation and statuses. A lot of our students travel across the border every single day to come over to UTEP to take classes. There's a lot of familial ties, traditions, and obligations within the community. Language, identity, and culture. We have this by literacy, speaking, a lot of us speak Spanish and English. High transfer student population from our community college. We also are a military base in El Paso. Fort Bliss is there, and so we will also serve military students and, of course, transborder international families. And again, talking about this open access, we're the only Tier 1 research institution that is open access. We have the highest percentage of faculty representatives of the student population, 29%. Our quality enhancement plan and strategic plan really does focus on community engagement. And we have revamped our academic advising areas to make sure that we are addressing retention for our students and ensuring that they graduate. And then we have a philosophical framework that we like to follow at UTEP. It's called the UTEP Edge. And the UTEP Edge focuses on meeting students where they're at. And so helping students identify the assets that they bring with them to the university. And then through participating in high impact practices, the students are encouraged to build new skills or further develop the skills that they've come to college, to the university with. Our strategic plan, our 2030 strategic plan, you can see that, you know, we really are fulfilling UTEP's mission through community engagement, through our different goals, as well as our strategic advantages. And so you can see here, these are our 4 strategic advantages, and you can see here community engagement is really a way to leverage our place. It's not just about leveraging our unique diversity, but also about the people who make it possible to contribute to the quality. And then we engaging with our community reinforces the culture of care, especially through, like I said, our framework, the UTEP Edge, where we have students understand some of the assets that they come with, specifically because of the community that they come from. And so it really does promote collaboration and reciprocity, and it is also it's ultimately at the core of the meaningful and sustainable relationships that we build as a university within our community. At UTEP, we do have a definition for community engagement, and this is shared widely. I won't read it all, but you can see it's very much in alignment with our mission as a university itself. And so what guides our work at the institution? Well, we do have an infrastructure, a center that I lead as a director, and some of our staff is here from the center and faculty that work with us here. And then we also have 2 faculty provosts, faculty fellows from the provost office who have staggered terms, and they come from multiple disciplines. We also have a community engagement council that's under the provost office as well. That's representative of each college and school across the university. And then we also maintain a community of practice for faculty who are doing community engaged scholarship work. And so the strategic leadership, we report to the provost office. As you see, they support a lot of our work, and I think that really does help in maintaining the importance of community engagement being established and maintained throughout the university within each college and school. And then, of course, utilizing the Carnegie elective classification for community engagement. As I've mentioned, we've been classified since 2010. And so every year that we've applied, we reapplied in 2015, we reapplied in 2020, and now we'll be reapplying in 2026. And so utilizing that application to really help us, guide us in where we want to be and be able to demonstrate that to the administration. Here's some data that we gathered for participation in community engagement. You'll see here we'll have about close to 7,000 students in service learning courses, 7,000 students contributing to community service, about 740,000 hours committed to the community, which translates to 22 million in economic impact towards our community. We have 235 faculty that are engaged and 335 community engaged courses. And this is just for one academic year that we were able to gather data for. And just a little bit about the center that supports community engagement on campus. We support faculty, so we're really kind of that resource center under the Provost Office that really does help support across the board community engagement efforts. And so, you know, helping to maintain healthy, mutually beneficial relationships with community partners is very important to us. And I think really having the center available to help with that has further helped grow community engagement across campus. And I think that's it. I don't want to move on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Jeanne McDonald.
Hi, I'm Jeanne McDonald, and I'm the Associate Director in the Office for Public and Community Engaged Scholarship at the University of Colorado, Boulder. So just first I'm going to give a little background about our university and then our office. Before that, I'm going to dig into the communities that we serve. University of Colorado Boulder, or CU Boulder as we call it, is a national public research university. We were established in 1876. And we are part of a 4-campus system. So in addition to the Boulder, there's Denver campus, Colorado Springs campus, and the medical campus in Aurora, which is called Anschutz. And CU Boulder is considered the flagship campus for the system because we're kind of the OG. We have 9 colleges and schools, and we offer over 150 academic programs, and we enroll around more than 35,000 students. Our campus is charged to directly benefit the residents and communities of our state. And this is the way we define community engagement on our campus. Basically, it is anchored in the scholarship of the research, teaching, creative work of our campus, and in mutually beneficial partnerships with our external communities. So our office is we are an academic support service. Basically, we have been charged with supporting the entire campus. And so we are located in the Division of Continuing Education because our dean wears 2 hats. He's the Dean of Continuing Education, but he's also the Vice Provost for Outreach Engagement. And we have a team of 6 staff members, so we're not huge. And like half of us are here today, basically. But we work to support faculty, staff, and students in a variety of ways. We provide professional development opportunities, whether that is on our campus or through like national organizations. We also work, networking, getting people together across campus, because outreach engagement is happening in all the schools and colleges across campuses and the institutes, and so everyone is very, spread out and doing their thing, and so it's very important that we try to bring people together so they can learn about the work that they're each doing. Because sometimes they cross over, and so it's good to get them together. We also work on partnership development, so faculty, staff need support of building partnerships out in the community. We hold a lot of relationships with different organizations around the state and different communities, and some of us grew up in Colorado, so we also have personal connections, so we use whatever we can to help those faculty find those partners out in the community. Probably the biggest thing we do is grant funding. We've been providing funds since 1999, and we award grants that go from seeding projects, smaller grants, all the way up to interdisciplinary faculty-led projects. And I think we award about 50 grants per year, and David will correct me, but I think we're around 700,000 in our budget per year. So that makes a really big difference to allow faculty to be able to do this work, and they're able to pay students as part of it, or just those expenses that go along with doing the work out in the community. We also are in charge of tracking the data that comes along with all the outreach and engagement we do, and as well as telling those stories of what the faculty, staff, and students are doing out in our communities. So as I said, we track the data. I just pulled this off of our website the other day. We built a website about 10 years ago. It's a custom database where we track the information around what faculty, staff, and students are doing. Well, we're about to move to collaboratory, so I have to admit we don't have everything in here right now. So this really is a snapshot. So we're not claiming this is everything CU Boulder is doing out in the community. But out of this, we currently, as you can see, we have 175 programs in this database. And I looked it up, 122 of them are actually taking place in the state of Colorado, reaching over 200,000 people. Like I said, this data is constantly updated in real time, but this does represent all of the different disciplines of our campus. So everything from arts and humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, engineering, law, business, environmental design, communication, education, and more. So the different community partners and people who are participating in these engagement projects, again, they run the gamut. We work with historically and excluded marginalized communities all across the state, unhoused individuals, Native American communities, at-risk youth, K-12 students and teachers, adult learners, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations. And the goal really is to partner with them. It's not about saving them. It's about working with them together and sharing our resources, but at the same time, they share their knowledge and their resources back with our university. So it's really a back and forth relationship. So this is kind of a map of Colorado where the engagement is taking place across our state. And some of these places have more than one thing happening in those areas. As you can see, a lot of it is concentrated in the Denver metro area, but our goal as our office is to get our faculty, staff, and students out around the state. And so we try to do that as best we can. But now I'm going to share some examples of what the work looks like, and really this is the part I get jazzed about. And the important thing about our office is we provide the support. So we're not the ones actually out in the community doing the work. It really is our faculty, staff, and students. So this is one example that's taking place out on our western slope. It is students in our CU Boulder Masters of the Environment program, and they assist rural Colorado communities to help revitalize their main streets and strengthen economic opportunities through outdoor recreation. So one of the projects is taking place in Rangeley, Colorado, but this particular program actually works all over the state. They're starting some new things down in the town of La Junta and a little community called Beulah this year. So they really work all over the place. But what they do is they work with a community steering committee that brings together a diversity of stakeholders that represent the broader community, and that could include local representatives from tourism, economic development, and parks and recreation. They also work with some state agencies. And the students spend time in the community, learning about the community, talking to the community, and they come up with a plan for that community. And then that kind of empowers that community to move forward on whatever initiatives they want to help build their economic capacity. And it's really focused on outdoor recreation. Down in our San Luis Valley area, which is a lot closer to New Mexico, we have a program out of our law school called the Acequia Assistance Project. And what it is, it provides low or no cost legal assistance and educational materials to Colorado's acequia communities. And so an acequia is both a physical irrigation system, so a ditch, as well as a community approach to water management for small scale farmers. These irrigators work together to meet each landowner's water needs in times of water scarcity, which unfortunately happens a lot in this region of our state. And they really cooperate to equally distribute the water, and if that's not physically possible, they often share fields, which is amazing. But most acequias have been operated informally for generations, and many remain unincorporated and without bylaws. So with the guidance of the faculty and pro bono lawyers, law students help address these challenges by drafting bylaws and government's documents, and they represent the acequias often in water right cases. And so I want to read a quote from a community member, Charlie Vasquez, who his family has been farming in the San Luis Valley since 1851. And he said that the Acequia Project has become part of our community. They have been very, very helpful and very generous, especially in areas like Conejos and Costilla counties. These communities just do not have a whole lot of money. The ditch would have kept on going the way it did before, decade after decade, but now it's been placed on a solid legal footing. So as I'm sure, like in New Mexico, water is just such a scarce resource, so making sure these people are protected and that things don't get stolen from them, that they really have the right to, is very important. Then moving up the state a little bit, in southeast Colorado in Pueblo, the American Music Research Center is conducting a comprehensive study of the music making, and culture of the city of Pueblo and the surrounding area. Pueblo is made up of a diverse minority communities that include Latino, African American, Jewish, and Eastern Europeans whose music and cultures have been largely neglected, not documented. So the project helps tell their stories as major contributors to the history of Colorado and this region. The researchers are creating a digital archive of interviews and performances that will be available to the public through our university library. And they're also working with CU Boulder's Latino History Project, which is creating educational materials in conjunction with K-12 educators for the Pueblo schools. And then last but not least, in our Denver metro area, we have a program called the Social Justice Environmental Quality Project. And this involves Denver residents from Globeville, Alaria, Swansea, Clayton, and Cole neighborhoods who are collaborating with nonprofit organizations, government entities, and an interdisciplinary team of researchers from environmental engineering, computer science, and social science. And this has been going on for many years. This area in Denver has a majority of minority and low-income populations, and have historically been disproportionately affected by environmental disruptions due to industrial and traffic-related pollutions. It is considered one of the most polluted zip codes in the United States. This is a community science project, and they're looking at air quality and emotional well-being of the residents. There recently, a huge construction project through these communities started with the I-70 expansion. So basically, they are being directly impacted by this construction. And so they've been looking at the air quality and kind of just how it is affecting them as a community. And this project includes community collaborators, Groundwork Denver, Green Latinos, Grow House, Cultivando, local schools, city, state, public health, and other nonprofit, government, and higher education entities. So it's a pretty big project. And according to the executive director of Groundwork Denver, Cindy Chang, the project met an urgent need to monitor and understand the air quality in the neighborhood of Denver that has experienced multi-generation impacts of environmental injustice. And the data gathered in the study has given impetus to community residents for action, including an air filter project to improve indoor air quality. So hopefully this gives you an idea. This is definitely not everything that's being done, but just wanted to pick out some examples of the work that our faculty and staff and students are doing around our state to share with you all today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I thought we would do something a little bit different from our institution is really, as we get ready for this report, we know of faculty doing wonderful work in the community, so I thought we'd bring a couple of these excellent faculty to talk about their outreach and what they're doing. So right now we're going to welcome Dr. Tiffany Lee from Native American Studies.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be able to share a little bit about our department and what we're doing. But first, Tiffany Lee initiated the Basilian Initiative, Nasla and Bashish Chin, Chicana, Dashichedo, Nasla and National, Tonsela de Nasha. So I just introduced myself in Navajo. I'm Navajo and Lakota, and my family, I'm of the Black Sheep clan from Crystal, New Mexico, which is in the northwest part of New Mexico on the Navajo Nation. I'm also a Oglala Lakota on my dad's side. And we always introduce ourselves in this way in Navajo culture because it's a way to establish who we're related to in the crowd and recognize our relatives through clan. And in that way, that's a concept called ke, or kinship. It's a philosophy of community for Navajo people, and it really, I think, embraces the whole idea of community engagement and community-based work and, you know, prioritizing community for well-being. So I am the recent chair. I was just stepped down and now free. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I'm still very involved with our department, which I'll share with you next. So this is a photo of all of our faculty who are standing in the back row there, and in the front row is our first cohort of PhD students. We just started our PhD program in Native American Studies last year, so they're in their second year now. And I think for our faculty, community engagement really is connected to community building. All of our faculty are engaged in some way with their own communities or other communities to work on research, teaching, service. They're all integrated in ways to build our communities, to transform our communities, to address problems and issues, but also recognize our assets and strengths and use that towards community building. To give you some examples, all of our faculty are also Native American from the Southwest, which is really unusual. On the far left is Dr. Wendy Gray Eyes. She's done a lot of work with the Navajo Nation in many different capacities. Right now, she just was elected or appointed as commissioner for the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission. So she's very involved with, you know, human rights issues now that the Navajo Nation is addressing. To her right is Dr. Maya Rodriguez, who's Lipan Apache, and she's in her mid-pro review right now, but she's already been engaged she's Lipan Apache with her community to map out the ancestral burial grounds of her community, but also to do an oral history project and understanding, you know, who their people are, their philosophy, and so on. To her right is Dr. Leola Paquin, who is Navajo and Filipina. Her work is really grounded in building Native American studies in K through 12 schools. So she's worked with schools that serve her community of Torreon, New Mexico, but she works with Cuba Independent Schools and Bernalillo to work with the teachers on building Indigenous studies, but also in professional development in understanding issues around Native Americans and the unique relationships that we have with the governments and with each other. To her right is Dr. Myla Vicente Carpio, who is Hickory Apache. We stole her from ASU, but she was happy to come home. And she does a lot of work around food sovereignty right now and water rights issues, working with the tribe in California as well on those issues. She wrote this fabulous book called Indigenous Albuquerque, which I highly recommend, and she's going to be updating that in the next few years, I think. And then to my right in the picture is Dr. Lloyd Lee, our current chair now. He's involved, again, also in many different capacities. He's Navajo, but I think in his role as the director for Center Regional Studies, a lot of us are involved in each other's projects. So we're working with him on a Native curriculum project where we are, and I see some our Center for Regional Studies folks back there, RC and Alicia, on films to address issues around Indigenous education, but also storytelling and Indigenous arts. And we'll use these films to work with teachers across New Mexico and secondary schools to create curriculum for high school, our grades 7 through 12 students. All of our PhD students, they take one of two paths, but they're really kind of integrated. We built our PhD so that they can take the traditional academic path and get, you know, trained in advanced research, a pathway to academia. But the other path is more for, they want to go into policy development and community building and, you know, working in relationship and collaboration with communities. But often those are integrated, but it's just a difference in terms of their priorities and focus and a few courses. So our mission is very much tied to our communities. So this is our mission. We will honor Indigenous experiences in the strengthening of Native nations and sustainable communities through academic excellence. There are 23 Native nations in New Mexico, many other populations of Native people who live in New Mexico as well, like Lakota and Comanche. And so we have, many partners in a lot of different issues, and we're really proud of our graduates because our graduates, we're one of the few programs in the country that has a bachelor's degree all the way up to a PhD in Native American Studies. We're one of 4, actually now 5 universities that have a PhD in Native American Studies. And our students really are driven by, and most of them are Native American, but many are not as well, but they're really driven by wanting to serve community and use their education and apply their skills and knowledge to serve their community in some ways. And that's a book written by one of our alum. We're really proud of her. She's gotten a lot of accolades for that book on As Long as Grass Grows, the indigenous fight for environmental justice from colonization to Standing Rock. That's a picture of many of our students who are in the Kiva Club, which is one of the oldest student organizations on campus, or in the country actually. It started back in the 1950s and was officially recognized. It helped to build Native American studies at this university. So our research and teaching and service really are involved with Native communities in our home communities, but it also informs Native studies nationally and globally. So I just want to give you a few examples, I guess, of my work that I'm in collaboration with other professors and community members in New Mexico. As I said before, New Mexico has 23 Native nations. We have around 12% of the state's population. UNM, I think, is close to 6% of the population is Native American. And the largest community is the Navajo Nation. And I've been working with a former student who's in the picture there. She's also one of the lead caretakers at this child care center called Castillo-Director, which means planting the language seed. And I've worked with another professor, Melvin Chi, in the linguistics department, director of the Navajo language program, and other community members to start this. Is now a nonprofit, but it's called a language nest. And it's where we serve urban Navajo families, which there's about 40,000 Native people who live in the Albuquerque area, and a lot of them are Navajo. Many of them want access and opportunity for their children to learn their language and their families to learn language, because the language is not just the language unto itself. It's building a cultural identity and a connection and belonging to your community and family. Many of them still have connections back home, but language is really the key for children and families to begin strengthening those connections. So in this language nest, we used to have about 20 infants and toddlers. Now it's more like 14 or 15 because of the capacity of our caretakers to work with that many children. But they're immersed in Navajo language 100% of the time. So it's like they come from primarily English-speaking families. Maybe their grandparents have more Navajo, but in their primary home, it's English. So when they come to San Castillo, they're immersed in Navajo, and they're learning it as a first language or a second language with, alongside English in their home. So that's our goal, is to produce first language Diné speakers who are grounded in a Diné cultural identity. So this might be considered service work, but it's really hard work and passionate work for me. But also, I connect my research and teaching to it. Our students, intern at the nest, and we are just now that we've gotten off the ground first. We're about in the second year, 2.5 years old now. We're starting a research program to really document and identify those connections between learning Diné and holistic well-being. And Dr. Chi is actually doing language acquisition research in how children learn Navajo as a second language. Well, it's a first language, but she's really documenting that process for them. So a lot of my research, as you can tell, is around language and language revitalization, but it's connected to education. My background is in Indigenous education. But I'm currently involved in a photo voice research project, but it's more like digital storytelling around Diné language and well-being, and it's funded by the Center for Regional Studies and the Ortiz Center at UNM. And in this project, we're working with infants all the way up to university college students who are learning Navajo in some context, whether it's a class or whether it's in the nest or whether it's an immersion school. we're trying to understand from their perspective through photos that relationship between learning Navajo and how it affects them, how it affects their identity, their sense of self, and all the complexities. When is it a negative experience? When are they teased or made fun of for how they pronounce things, and how does that affect them? It's really trying to inform current language revitalization efforts and language education for Navajo communities and beyond. This type of research, many indigenous communities are in the state where language has shifted. The first language children learn is English, and that's true for Navajos, which have a lot of speakers, but the speakers are older, at the elderly level at this point. So those are just some photos from my family, and just give you a sense of how we kind of tie, trying to understand that connection to language to well-being. That's the photos I would have taken if I was a participant in this project, which is, one is my niece's Kinalta, which is her puberty ceremony, coming of age, and that's my aunt grinding corn, and language is throughout the ceremony, throughout all the activities, and everything that's done for 4 days. That's also a picture of Salt Sala, which is a mountain right near my mother's home community, my community. And it's one of the first phrases I learned. It's just, where I know my family is from, and centered and grounded in that place. So language is very much tied to land, to ceremony, to spirituality, to everything. Okay. Oh, didn't know I had a little animation there. I think this is the last one I was going to show you. It's a broader research project on Indigenous language immersion and Native American student achievement. It's a national study funded by the Spencer Foundation. And this was a project that I'm in collaboration with other university professors, but it was the Indigenous language immersion schools that really asked for this research. Now, an Indigenous language immersion school is, again, like the nest, a school where the children are learning all academic content through their language. And these children are coming to school with English as their primary language. So some of the schools start as a nest, some of them start as a preschool, some of them start as kindergarten. Most of them only go up to grade 5 or 8, but a few in Hawaii in particular go all the way into college. You can get a PhD through Hawaiian language. So we have languages represented that are Hawaiian, Navajo, Ojibwe, and Mohawk. 8 case studies you see in the red little box there, where we worked with these schools and communities to understand, how they are passing on the language, but passing on all the academic content that students are learning. And a lot of this has to do with that there isn't a lot of documentation for ILI schools in the outcomes of these students, but they get a lot of pushback because there's fear externally and internally from within the community that if you're learning through your language, you're going to be held back in some way. You're not going to succeed in the modern English world because you're learning your native language. But what we're finding with the comparison in the purple, a matched pair design, where we're looking at schools who, a child, if they were to go to an ILI school, a similar child would go to a non-ILI school, like an English medium school from the same community, same demographic background, what would be their opportunities to learn? What would be their outcomes in academic achievement? What we're finding is there isn't much difference at all. And as there might be, this is basically on English and math tests, which standardized tests aren't the greatest measure, but they do help us understand that in a comparison. And the children are not being held back. In fact, they're doing just as well, if not better, on those tests as they get older in grades. And they have their Indigenous language and that sense of their connection to community and culture. We're also doing a survey of Native language programs across the country to understand what's happening, not just immersion programs, but Native language programs in general. And it's all to inform this larger research question around what can a study of ILI teach us about improved educational practice for Native American learners. So again, not just looking at only ILI schools, but what ILI can teach us to inform all schooling practices that serve Native students. I think that's it. Yep. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Next up is Dr. Irene Vasquez from Chicano and Chicana Studies. Thank you.
Can I use the arrows? Or
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. In my presentation today, I'm going to talk about a model that we use for community engagement. And this is actually a graphic design of that model. It was designed for us by a distinguished professor of biology, Dr. Maggie Werner Washburn, because she was fascinated with the idea that a smaller sized department like Chicana and Chicano studies could accomplish so much in teaching, in research, and in service. And the outcomes of that model we shared in our academic program review self-study last year. The outcomes are nothing short of a significant increase in enrollment, a 100% retention rate at the undergraduate and graduate levels, 80% of our graduate students being published in various types of outlets, and from the total data gathered, a 100% graduation rate. And understanding that we had a small department, less than 10 faculty, she set out to sort of understand, and we went through multiple conversations. And I think so what this design shows is that in CCS, we embrace all of our stakeholders, and that includes student, faculty, staff, and community, because everyone has a social investment in our department, and therefore they have a voice. Our successful community-engaged teaching and learning involves all of these stakeholders, and that occurs through monthly meetings, and everyone is invited. Not everyone can show up, but everyone is invited. And everyone's contributions are critical to successful programs and research, and help develop robust feedback loops that support excellence, equity, and inclusivity. And what this model is pretty dynamic, because almost every week we get a new idea about what it is that we can do. But you can see that the rosish colored circles represent our curriculum, our academic programs. The green circles represent our different types of community engaged scholarship. The blue circles are the programs and initiatives that we have that serve communities. And then the green relate in particular to high school students, because when we began our department, we decided that the high schools would be an important area of outreach and engagement for us. And so we started some programs in the high schools that we'll talk about. But basically what it shows is that that a regenerative force multiplies with each feedback loop, with each program, and with each person. And so one of the pillars of this model is creative consciousness, and that involves reaffirming interdependency and interdependent relationships across all of our stakeholders. We are not isolated at the university. We do not create borders or boundaries in terms of who is involved. We stress that students form a part of the larger society, often reflected through social identities and differences and engagement. We know Nuevo Mexicano, Chicanx, and Latino peoples are heterogeneous, and they reflect different and diverse backgrounds. So we accept also that many of our students are first generation. And I think I read today that it's something like 70% of UNM are historically underrepresented or first generation. And that they're already highly analytical, and they understand that their schooling systems often marginalize many of their peers. Others pushed out, and others who adapt to schooling systems move forward and take a college path. And as community engaged scholars, we seek to intervene in those educational pathways that lead to communities and amplify and grow them. And that is our emphasis. We grow those pathways to the universities through different types of engagement. And a lot of our work actually ties in the arts, because it's such a vibrant way to reach people, whether it's visual art, music, dance, performance. So our understanding ourselves deeply and others is critical to social improvement. And our academic work and research lead to investigation, teaching, community building, and public awareness. And a good example of this is the Afro-Chicanx research project and digital archive run by Dr. Doris Cariaga Coleman. And this project explores identities, experiences, and histories of people of African descent within Chicanx and Mexican communities in the diaspora through oral histories with people who self-identify as Afro-Mexican, Blaxican, Afro-Chicanx, Black, and Mexican across the US-Mexico borderlands. And another important value in this model is reciprocity. So if we develop a creative, critical consciousness of ourselves as interdependent with those around us, this leads to reciprocity, engaging in and sharing knowledge for the good and the success of the whole. And of course, we have many different examples. In fact, I have 10 minutes, so I gotta speak quickly and try to include as many different projects we're engaged in. But the recent Greenfire Times included essays by Professors Levi Romero and Dr. Divana Olivas, both were in the room with us, who co-authored works with their students that were published that were grounded in community engagement. And in fact, part of what we're trying to do with our projects is to lead students to publishing, because I'm sure many of you published papers or wrote papers you never published. And because our students, 75% of them are involved in 4 or more community-based efforts or organizations, they tend to be involved in research that is incredibly important and timely. And so the IC College program now has served over 3,000 students. This doesn't take into account this year, and has served 1,000 dual degree enrolled students through Albuquerque Public Schools. Many of them, as we watch their success, go to the university and are more acclimated, and so they do well. This is just another image. I think one of the most important things about IC is that when we started it, two of the teachers at Atrisco and at Highlands were UNM graduate students. And what we observed from them teaching both at UNM and teaching in their schools is it created a feedback loop, a unique ecosystem where high school teachers earn advanced degrees and teach dual enrollment courses in their high schools, and the students are invigorated by that involvement with UNM on multiple levels. Autonomy, that's another important value in our department, and that involves formulating new knowledge, implementing it, disseminating it in the interest of self and community well-being. And so we have community members who've been involved in a number of our academic publications. I just chose a few, and just from the last few months. The department started Regeneración. This is a journal that serves the field of Chicana and Chicano studies. And there's only one other journal that serves the field specifically, and that's located at UCLA. But within this journal, Keith Sanchez, one of our IC teachers, who's also a PhD student, wrote a paper about teaching Manito, New Mexico to knowledge and power curators. And so what we're able to do is to encourage the students to publish. We put their work out there. It's part of their dissertation research, and they're enacting that in their high school classrooms. And the bottom right has another journal article that came out about a month ago in CalFU, a comparative and ethnic studies journal that involved our students creating artistic imagery in front of our casita as a way of illustrating the importance of cultural expression in the university. We also have our field schools. We have one taught by Professor Levi Romero, Field Methods in Oral History and Archaeology. There's a couple of images up here. We recently sponsored the Mysteries of New Mexico and Beyond. That led to the development of critical mystery studies here at UNM, led by our students and our faculty, and which will lead to publications. They're having their symposium next week. We also have Curanderismo, and that is an incredibly important program with an international reach. We will be having the Summer Institute and the Traditional Health Fair. And I forgot to mention that these are great examples of autonomy, because what curanderismo does is it gives people the tool and the knowledge to help work on preventable illnesses. And it gives, folks the training, the interaction with experts to be able to improve their well-being. And then collectivity is another important value. And what we mean by that is that we cultivate a dynamic body that reveals trust and respect and secures consensus on learning, accountability, and change. And a lot of our collective initiatives, whether it's Inteligente, Arte por Vida, I can't name all of our programs, they're student-led. Faculty are involved on a horizontal level, supporting and attending the events created by students. So nurturing collectivity in higher education redirects our focus to creating conditions for all students' success. Our students are better prepared to enter their communities, understanding social conditions that impact the people they serve, and respond and interact in more respectful and engaged ways. I have two last examples. One is our Son Jarocho collective. These are students from Chicana, Chicano, and Native American Studies, and a couple of community members who went to Paris, France, to present on their work involving Son Jarocho, which is a form of music that has indigenous, African, Spanish influences. So in closing, at CCS, we believe learning happens in multiple overlapping spaces that cross heterogeneous communities with diverse capabilities and needs. Community engagement allows us to triangulate learning spaces and create more lasting connections across the state. CCS faculty, Dr. Divana Olivas and Joe Garcia, launched this garden project in front of our casita to provide an immersive and experiential learning experience that centers on relevant knowledge and the growing of culturally significant crops. According to Olivas and Garcia, the garden encourages holistic learning about patterns in nature, processes, and movements among living beings, and the spark of life that connects us all. I believe this is an apt-closing statement, although I will say that this presentation will also become a publication that will involve all of our stakeholders that have been a key part of this model in our department.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That's incredible work. What we're going to do now is do a panel discussion. I have several questions for the panelists, and then open it up to the audience for any questions that you all might have. One of the things I think is really important about this work is really the community, and the first question is really about how do community members come to your institutions, or particularly to some of the departments? How are those engaged? Are those formalized, or is it really kind of like my experience here at UNM? It's a relationship. So I'm kind of curious about how you guys handle the interaction with communities. You take it? Yeah. I'll just pass the microphone. How about that?
Thank you. So at the center, I've been able to really press our provost office to provide us with a part-time community outreach specialist. And I think that has definitely, and she's here with us, Naomi Furtman. She's also faculty within the College of Liberal Arts and Women and Gender Studies. But she, I think, has really been key in helping us reestablish partnerships within our community and maintain partnerships that we've had with our community. I just, as a center, it was a little bit difficult to connect with all of our partners, but when I met Naomi, she was really grounded in our community. She had experience serving on boards and having her students participate with partners. She was making her own connections connections. And so I think, you know, that position really became key. And so that the community had somebody at the university to go to. And I'll give you one quick example. So there was an instance that happened where one of our partners was directly connected to a faculty member who wanted to work with them on a grant application, grant proposal. And you know, this partner was really excited about it. It was a lot of money, potential money that could come in, a big grant. But working with the faculty member was a little bit difficult, as some of you know. And so what was nice about that situation is they reached out to Naomi and was like, hey Naomi, help me. You know, there's this faculty member, I'm not sure if you know that faculty member, but help me. How do I get through this situation? And I think it really did, you know, so help smooth things over. The proposal was submitted. Hopefully it'll be awarded, but I think having that person, that connector, that just focuses on building those and maintaining those partnerships has really helped us at UTEP.
I think one of the ways we, and this may not be a direct answer to the question, that we connect our university with our communities is we have community councils. And it's similar to what the other Jenna is saying in terms of how we have liaisons. So we have these community councils, for example, we have a Hispanic community council, and it's built of members of the community that have an interest. They don't work for the university, but they kind of sit within the Office of Diversity and Inclusion in terms of how they operate on at a university level, and they help connect us with community interest, community outreach. For example, the Hispanic Community Council is run by the Executive Director of the YWCA. And so those community members help to keep us grounded in what the priorities of the communities are and how we as a university can connect with those communities, and particularly our students, in the most meaningful ways, and also our faculty.
Yeah.
So I think at our unit level, the department level, a lot of that relationships with community has been based on our students and their relationships in their own communities, and helping often, you know, honestly, to repair relationships between the university and Native communities, which have, you know, there's a lot of history of harm and oppression from researchers and in very recent history. So there's, you know, even as a Native Studies professor, a Native American person myself, my own community is not necessarily going to just welcome me with open arms to doing research in my community. There has to be a lot of relationship building, trust building, and, you know, and I think our students really, you know, they engage in communities because that's their why they're getting their education. And for our master's students, for example, they have to do a project of excellence. So instead of a thesis, they create a project in collaboration with a community partner, and write about it and do research with that partner, but there's a reciprocal relationship that both students and the communities benefit from. And so I think they are kind of laying the groundwork for repairing and restoring and building relationships with communities who now see a place that the institution can serve them in beneficial and meaningful ways.
Thank you. Go ahead, Irene.
Well, what I wanted to share was that when the department started its strategic planning efforts in 2011, one of the things we did in order to connect with the community was Professor Levi Romero and I went to about 8 community or 10 community-based organizations, and we asked them, who do you serve? What are the needs? How is it that Chicana and Chicano studies can interact with your organizations? And several classes developed from that process where we require community-based engagement through internships or service learning. I think we have about 3 classes that embed that component, and there are others that are also beginning to integrate community engagement. And so with IC College, so we have direct connections with different organizations. And then IC College now grew from 3 to 12 schools. And what we find is that the teachers often come to us and ask us, Do you have curriculum? Do you have somebody who can come to our school? Can we bring our students to the casita? And we've gotten to the point now where we are beyond our capacity to be able to continue to support. And you know, sometimes departments will have to make tough decisions, but we never have a shortage. We no longer have to go out and look to find communities to engage with. They're at our front door.
Great, thank you.
Well, like I mentioned, our faculty and staff, most of them, I say, they build their own relationships and partnerships out in the communities. But we do, you know, work to help support that or make those connections, especially if faculty members are like, well, I'd like to do this work, but I don't know who to do it with. So we hold relationships with a lot of different organizations across the state. You know, community members and all, and so sometimes we're able to help make those connections, but vice versa, we try to be that point of contact for the community coming into the university. So if they have a specific need, they don't know where to start, because you know, coming into the university is like, where the heck do I go? So we try to be that contact, that conduit, and then help them, you know, do some matchmaking and you know, make those connections, and so that and then support them so they can kind of take off and do whatever they need to do. And then we also do some professional development activities where we have like a program called Community Perspectives, where we take a cohort of faculty. The past couple of cohorts have gone down to the southeast part of our state, and we do community meetings and basically listening tours, and listen to the community and see what they are, you know, what are their assets and what are they working on, what are their needs. And so really having the faculty learn about this area of the state that is very different, you know, from the Boulder area, but also just hearing. So it's not like, let's just not make assumptions and do something. It's let's hear what are they doing and how can we, you know, empower and help and enhance their work. So we kind of work both ways in that sense.
Thank you. The second question is really about how the institution supports this type of work. You know, whether it's internal funding that is, you know, acquired to support faculty and staff, but also in terms of tenure and promotion. So, you know, that's a big hurdle that we are kind of facing right now, that we're trying to develop this as scholarship and not service, but really, you know, creating a platform where this is really recognized. So I'm just curious about how that is handled in particular departments and different institutions. So we'll just go back the same way. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the center is, it reports to the provost office, but when we were reorganized, it had like kind of a dual reporting structure, which was to the assistant provost, vice provost for faculty affairs, and then the vice president for student affairs. And so, and we were both supported through funding from student affairs and faculty affairs, or academic affairs. And so it was really helpful in being able to connect to the student engagement programming that we had available through our department, like the service learning, the volunteer days. And so all of that was organized in partnership with student affairs. And then our faculty community engaged scholarship efforts were supported by academic affairs in the provost office. And it's been really useful to be able to have that connection specifically to the vice provost for faculty affairs, because we've had a foot in the door in learning about what's important to faculty right now, what's happening within their realm as far as tenure and promotion, mentoring, supporting faculty, and really being able to think of ways that we can help support faculty within the area of community engaged scholarship. Because, you know, the provost office is already focusing on that. I can chime in and say, but hey, look, we're, you know, coming up with this type of programming that'll help support faculty. So that dual reporting relationship has been really helpful in supporting us financially, but also programmatically.
I think very transparently, this is woefully underfunded. There's pockets of areas where it's institutionally funded, but a lot of this work is groundwork that people do without recognition or funding. You know, we know many times, particularly historically marginalized faculty have real commitments to community outreach and engagement, and it should be recognized as scholarship, but is often not. So I think we're in the process of trying to understand how to better fund these kind of efforts. And I'm a vice provost, and I have a real heart for making sure this is institutionalized, and our vice provost for faculty affairs as well. So we come up with creative ways to probably fund it, but I would love to see it be more. And I'll be interested in hearing how, this afternoon, how others have worked to make sure that this is inside of tenure promotion, because historically it hasn't been. And so people who do this kind of work have been unrecognized and unsupported. So that's probably not a great answer. That makes people feel warm and fuzzy. But
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly true. Our faculty in neighborhood studies, as I mentioned, are very involved with community-based work from the very start, from writing their dissertation to now. And it is underfunded. We've been able to find foundations to support a lot of our work largely. That's where, if we find funding, it comes from foundations. I think one of the ways that our department has tried to, subvert the tenure and promotion process is to write our own tenure and promotion guidelines that recognizes community-based work and scholarship as equal to a peer-reviewed journal, for example. So, and often, sometimes these reports that are for communities are only for them, and they're not to be published. They're for internal, use and application of that knowledge in their, internal systems or to inform their own work. So we've written in our departmental promotion and tenure guidelines that we recognize that kind of scholarship, and it's listed on their CVs and described in that way. And so we hope that the review, as it goes beyond the department, that they get copies of these guidelines to recognize that's the value of our department. So I'm really excited to see the UNM moving in that direction as well. I think the other thing is I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences, and we just wrote a strategic plan that also is recognizing this kind of community engagement, and it's promoting it amongst the college and the programs and the faculty as something to be recognized in the promotion and tenure process as well.
Thank you.
Well, I'll chime in on the underfunded nature of community engaged practices. Although, like my colleague Dr. Lee, I'm optimistic, having reviewed our College of Arts and Sciences strategic plan that has an emphasis on community engagement, that has an emphasis on well-being. I think seeing this document is incredibly important because it sends a signal to chairs and faculty in departments that community engagement is legitimate academic research, and that its relevance is critically important for the betterment of society. So we can, in fact, integrate in our RTP guidelines, our retention, tenure, and promotion. Those are the guidelines, right, that allow faculty to become permanent faculty, or that allow faculty to become full professors. And there is that hierarchy. So how do you subvert it, like Dr. Lee mentioned, and that is that, a standard in many fields is a book publication, right? And typically in the past, the folks were encouraged to go with certain presses. They would have the most legitimacy. But I think, a big contribution of ethnic studies fields and departments is that they have diversified that range of publications that faculty can publish, and community engagement is a pillar of ours. So we're able to design guidelines that, yes, in some ways honor, right, the traditional book manuscript, but where that book goes and who it serves, can in some ways be shaped by the department. But we also honor different types of publications in all range of outlets. And so that means, different journals, periodicals, magazines, websites, blogs, policy papers, grants. All of those entail academic research. And so I believe probably our departments are leading in this area. But it doesn't mean that we don't have to work doubly hard to make the case for that faculty member, because it will go up to other committees at the college and university level. So where we can get support from the president and the provost to really center community engaged scholarship, like this forum, we do need the messages coming from above, below, in the middle.
So I would say, of course, we always want more money. The more we can have, the more we can do. But I think we've been very fortunate because when the former dean of continuing education who established our office, she really saw it as this extension of continuing education. She put us in continuing education, which is an auxiliary division, so we are very well supported in that fact. And when she built our office and started that grant programming in 1999, it really was a partnership with the Office of the Chancellor and Office of the Provost, so that really kind of helped solidify the funding. So we're very fortunate that we can give these grants to faculty to do their work out in community. They're not huge grants, compared to some things, but for some, especially those in maybe the arts and humanities, that might be the only funding they can find for these projects. But others are able to take the money and get things started and often go on to much bigger grants, NSF, NIH, because they've started something and then they're able to grow it. So that's always, those are those great success stories that we're always very proud of. As far as tenure and promotion, I think it's very similar to what I'm hearing from everyone up here. It is not something that is, community engagement isn't, I would say, across campus isn't very valued when it comes to tenure promotion. We often hear stories of early career faculty being told, don't do it until you can get tenure and do your other stuff. Don't do this other side stuff. But I think the faculty who have been successful are those that really do ground it in their scholarship, that it is part of their research. So that research in the community is informing their own research, and so they're able to kind of put that in as they move through tenure. But we have had some departments who have written their own guidelines, and so they do value it probably a lot more than others. So we're inching towards it, but it definitely is not something that is campus-wide. And David's going to talk more about that this afternoon.
Fantastic, thank you. The last question, and then I'll open it up to the room, is really about best practices. And Dr. Lee was talking about trust in the community. And one of the things that I've witnessed in my own work is that it takes time to do this work, right? And being able to work in communities takes substantial time to be able to gain that trust with the community. So I'm just curious about, in the work that you do and how your offices organizes. Do you have any suggestions about best practices?
So we've actually been working through this with some partners that we have in the College of Health Sciences. The College of Health Sciences has a group called Capture, and that's a group of community and faculty that come together that I think they meet monthly and share information about the work that's happening that's community focused. And the Capture has developed and adopted what's called principles of partnership. And those were adopted from CBPR practices that have been published, before. And they, Capture worked together with community to come up with these principles of partnership that can be followed or referred to by faculty, by community, just to kind of remind everyone what is good practices of building these partnerships. What does it mean? What are some of the etiquette guidelines and the process itself for building these partnerships? And we like to refer to those principles of partnerships when working with faculty who are looking to establish or build partnerships, or community partners as well. And so I will look into sharing those with everyone that's here. Maybe Jim, I can send that to you so you can see what those principles are. But you know, it goes through every stage. You know, when meeting with a community partner, these are you want to consider. These are the people you want to consider working with within the community, and when coming up with you know, ideas for a research question. This is some, you know, steps that you can follow or think through with the community partner. And so it's a really good, information to have available.
I think in terms of our best practices, we kind of rely on kind of the tried and true principles, like what Jenna is talking about in terms of respecting each other and understanding priorities and needs. I think one example is we recently connected our campus health partner on the university with the Tucson Indian Center to try to understand better how to provide healthcare services for Native students who can get free healthcare at the Tucson Indian Center, behavioral health and primary care. And so the initial meeting was touring both spaces and understanding both services, and then bringing the Tucson Indian Center to our primary care and behavioral health providers to help them listen to the needs and the priorities and what would be culturally responsive care on our campus. So I think we just kind of lean into how do we listen to each other, respect the cultural things that we need to in order to provide the services. So that's just kind of one example of how I think we use best strategies of listening, respecting, and understanding before we move into how this partnership can look.
I would say, yes, I agree with everything the Jennas have said on that side. We definitely work in those areas as well. I would say my own personal mantra, because I've been doing this work for a long time, I always tell faculty and staff, manage expectations. So make sure you're communicating with your community partners, make sure they understand what you can and cannot do. And also just make sure they understand the cadence, because you know, we in academic, you know, we are on a very much different schedule than the rest of the world. And so, you know, we get to finals and things get busy, and so you just need to be able to communicating with your partner, make sure they know, like, I'm gonna disappear for a week or whatever, or we're gonna go on a 2-week, you know, holiday vacation over winter break, so you're not gonna hear from me or whatever. And so I always just say, please manage expectations, because I think that just sets you up for success, and kind of takes away, you know, misunderstandings and things like that, and it's building that trust and that relationship with your partner, and delivering on, you know, if you say you're going to do something, then deliver on it, because also don't want to do more harm than good when you're out in the community.
Yeah, so I would agree with everything that's been said, and I think I would just add that the way our department, I guess, at best practices, we've integrated it into our coursework. So we have a lot of research courses from our undergrads to our PhD that really emphasize what we call indigenous-based methodologies, which is a kind of a philosophy of how you interact with community and following cultural protocols, developing those relationships and trust, and you know, and we learn a lot from students as well, as they know their communities and how you engage with them, and learning from a lot of past mistakes that have been done with researchers as well. You know, you've heard about helicopter research, extracting knowledge and taking it off and publishing, and then it becomes theirs and not the community, and there's no benefit. So we critique a lot of research as well. So I think our students really become, understand a lot of those nuances and are careful and take time, and really, and we are honest about, you know, the concerns we have coming from an institution, but also how we're part of the community, and just, you know, being candid and learning, you know, and integrating it at all levels of coursework throughout our degrees.
I'll say ditto to everything. But I'll highlight a few things, and you know, one one way to look at this question is to consider it within the culture of the department, because I'm a faculty member. But I think one of the best practices we follow is encouraging all of our stakeholders to generate ideas for community engagement. And what that allows us to do, really, because as faculty, we are probably involved in our communities. As individuals, we commit our time and resources. But at the university, it becomes harder because we're very place-based, whether it's in our offices or in our classrooms or in meetings. And so it really does behoove us to empower other stakeholders to take the lead on community engagement. And as faculty, we can partner with, support, or guide our students to, very importantly, work with the ethics of the community and not impose our own ethics as researchers or as people from the university. And we try to encourage to the extent that you can. Most of you probably understand that assistant professors are on this clock and they've got to really kind of follow through on what the expectations are of their department. But when faculty are tenured, they have a little bit more time, right, to be able to guide students in publishing. And that's what we find in our department is our students want to publish because they see the immediacy of the issues and the needs and the concerns in their families and in their communities. And, it is them that face, right, some of these critical social and economic and environmental issues. They are on the front lines. So, it's important for us as faculty to use our privilege to support best practices in community engagement.
Wonderful, thank you. We've got a few minutes to take some questions from anybody in the audience. Is there anybody that has a question that they'd like to ask? David?
I have a question for all of you as far as how at the university level you're integrating community engagement into climate action plan.
Into what? I'm sorry, into what?
Climate action.
Oh, climate action.
How are you engaging with climate action planning and community engagement at the university level?
I think so. Well, I'll just go first, although our expert just left the room, Dr. Divana Olivas, who, as an undergraduate here at UNM, began her work on food studies, looking at food deserts in Las Lunas area, and developed a garden there. She went on to get her PhD at USC. We're fortunate to have her back. She is doing work on environmental sustainability, food sovereignty, because climate, of course, has impact on the living environments that we're on, but also on our food sources and the food sources of all living beings. And so understanding how climate will affect migration, food, living conditions is critical. And so we see ourselves as wanting to be more involved in that.
But I was asking at the university level.
Oh.
That might be, can I have the microphone?
Sorry, I didn't know.
Sorry.
I'll kind of address it from the University of New Mexico. One of the things that we see ourselves in the Office of Community Engagement is really providing a network opportunity. So we have the Grand Challenges funding that comes from the Vice President for Research Office. And we more recently have met up with the Arid Institute to talk about how we partner up and really thinking about a proposal. We're gonna seek an NSF grant to be able to do a proposal that starts to address some of these issues that are tied to our region and really looking at sustainable practices for the future. So I think I think it's a little bit different from a faculty member versus a center or an office that's doing this. So our role is really to be able to take those ideas and really try to match up staff and faculty that have this kind of interest. So I don't know if that answers your question, David. Anybody else that
First off, thank you so much for all of the work that each of you have done. I only got to hear the last few, but even listening to the panel, it's been such a brainstorm just hearing you each speak. And so there were several moments of brilliance that have illuminated some ideas. And so feel free to respond to this and whatever you end up perceiving. Well, when talking about funding, we talked about money, but I'm also thinking about time. Where I'm working with several students across several departments, and I'm trying to get them to meet at least once a month to talk about their stuff, and they're like, hey, I have to work, hey, I have to feed my family, hey this, hey that. And so then I'm like, okay, well then we'll meet again next month, and then it becomes next month, and then it's the end of the year, and then we try next year, and then they graduate. And so thinking about time, but also thinking about multiraciality. So many of these sites support students within the given racial constructs of the United States. But speaking as a Filipino American who was raised in a racially diverse family and culture, it's like in order to know about my Filipinity, I've had to engage with Chicano, Mexican, and Latinx cultures, but then also learning from Afro studies and many Black scholars, and then coming to New Mexico, learning from Native studies, and it's like I'm always having to borrow someone else's pencil in order to fulfill my own exam. Meanwhile, when talking about community engagement within a university, talk about funding, we're underfunded because other places are hyperfunded. There's a reason why there's the joke, and within many departments of man, students, why aren't more of you athletes? Because then maybe we would have a working clock and we would have the funding. Not to say anything bad about, about the health and sciences and taking care of the body, but still underfunded, and just talk about borrowing someone's pencil. It feels like I'm in one community writing and being able to articulate ideas, and I go to another community, another classroom, another space on the university, and it feels like I'm having to erase some of that. So this simultaneous writing and erasure of say this here, but don't say that there because blah, 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 politics. And so concerning time, multiraciality, and constantly having the work erased underneath your feet, what are some other survival tactics?
Well, just speaking to the funding, the first thing that came to my mind was, one of the largest reasons Native students in particular leave or stop out of universities for financial reasons. So our department has made a point of funding our internships. We're fortunate to get this wonderful grant from the Mellon Foundation where we can pay our students to do their internship, and then they can kind of find a place to go that they want. It's not dependent on, taking time out of, they all work, so they have to figure out, the time. We also use class time we have a service learning class, it's called community-based learning in Indigenous context, but we use that time to go to community and establish those relationships, because again, a lot of our students are transfer students, they have families, they live far away, so we have to take all that into account. It is complex, and the multiracial thing, all I would say there, in my context, we have students from multiple tribes and multiple races, and we learn from each other, and hopefully that, we find those connections by learning from one another, and the complex identities that we have, and a lot of times the shared values that we have as well. So that's all I'll say. Yeah.
Well, I'll say that we need Asian American studies at UNM. I mean, that's critically important. Okay, that's part of my response to you. But the other part is, the question of multiraciality is very complex, because if we're striving for a universal subject, in a way, we already have that in some areas, right? And so what all of our ethnic studies departments do, they do, center diverse communities within, larger ethnic racial rubrics, you could say. But if you don't have that, then you go back to, right, an environment that proposes or postulates a universal subject. And that is total erasure, right? But at UNM, we need to do more, right, to create a more inclusive and encompassing curriculum. Because it's critically important for us to find ourselves in these spaces. And that way, right, we're more engaged and motivated to go, to do our very best in education because we know in some ways it connects to who we are and who our communities are.
We'll take one more question. There's one back there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I want to really appreciate the experts in the fields. The informations and deliberations are very more important. So background, I have a whole lot of experience when I was in my home country. I worked in about 12 communities as a project manager. So many of these things I can relate with this information. So I wrote down a question that I really want to kind of gather this information and get a response from it. So every community that we work with, they are uniquely different with their rich values, cultures, and practices. And though they may have similarities in these communities in terms of values, cultures, whatsoever, however, it may not be something that is agreeable in these different communities' engagement. So my question is, how do we really develop a practical place-based strategies for stakeholders engagement from a systems integrated mindset approach? What I'm looking forward to know is about what have you been doing in terms of your approach, interventions and actions in executing research findings or something related within your strategies and framework in implementing these strategies, framework in these uniquely different communities. Basically, because communities are different, they are built differently. So one strategy's framework will not work for another community. So how do you really develop that practical place-based strategies for stakeholders engagement?
Unplug that microphone. Oh.
So when I gave my brief presentation, I talked a little bit about the framework that UTEP has established institution-wide. It's called the UTEP Edge. And what I think really is beneficial about that program is, again, having students understand when they enter the university where they're at, meeting students where they're at, as far as helping them identify the different assets that they bring with them to the university setting because of their experiences that they've had, being non-traditional students. And so a lot of students, come from the community. They still live with their families. They still support their families. Some are parents. Some, are taking care of their grandparents. Some are working full-time. And so having students really understand that a lot of those experiences that you've already had to encounter bring a lot of assets that you can bring to the university, such as time management, and so really the edge is helping them look at those experiences, but then develop opportunities through high impact practices. Community engagement is one of those high impact practices where they can bring or identify those assets that they brought. So for instance, a lot of our students are bilingual. Obviously, they speak both English and Spanish, but they don't see it because of the community that we come from. They don't see that as an asset that they bring to the table. And so they won't list it on their resumes. They won't, in interviews talk about how they are bilingual. And so helping students identify, like, yes, that's a great asset to have. Being bilingual is good. And so they get to identify those things or those skills or developments that they've been able to work through from those personal experiences, from those cultural experiences, bring them to the table at UTEP, but then also get to enhance those skills by participating in high impact practices.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll let a quick response because I know we're.
Okay, I'll be real quick. So one of our principles in our department is this notion of interdependency. And we aspire for our students to understand the different populations in the state. So if you take a place-based approach, you know, for us, yes, you know, Latino students may be 50+% of the student population. And to us, you know, understanding Africana studies, understanding Native American studies, Asian American studies is critical, and we have a comparative ethnic studies class. We believe that the more our students are interacting with diverse perspectives and people, the better prepared they are in their future. And so there's different ways to do it, whether it's courses, curriculum, activities, programs that engage students from different ethnic, racial backgrounds.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank our panelists. If you give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for attending. We're going to take a lunch break. We'll come back at 1 o'clock, and I hope you'll join us for Tammy's keynote lecture. So we'll be back at 1. Thank you.
I learned a lot.